Fantasy Football Night in America is now live. Hi, hello, and welcome to the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. I'm your host, Eric Balkman. You may know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the Fantasy Football Players Championship, and the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. You can follow me on the X at Eric Balkman and on the Blue Ski at Eric Balkman as well, a.k.a. Blue Sky. I want to welcome in a guy who's no stranger to this program, a guy who's no stranger to Dynasty Fantasy Football. Cranking out great content for Under the Helmet Dynasty, cranking out great shows with Jordan McNamara with the Dynasty Think Tank, and creating awesome articles for Footballguys.com. You follow him on the X at Chad Parsons NFL. Chad Parsons, welcome in, man. How are you?
It's that time of year, right? I mean, things are heating up. The draft is going to slap us across the face for what we didn't know for 4 months and 4 years of these guys' careers. So at least they're not in the portal anymore, right?
Yes. I always wonder this, like with a guy like you who is so engrossed in Dynasty Fantasy Football year round. I mean, the draft is special to all of us, but I almost think it's sort of like a bump in the road for you with everything that is going on with your trades, with different leagues, orphans, and everything that you have going on. This is like more of like a fun thing for you, isn't it? I feel like this does not register on your dial the way it might register on a lot of other people's dials. Is that how you feel about it?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would say the NFL draft, I always say, wakes people up from their slumber. You got half the league that isn't really paying that much attention. You know, FFPC, we got roster cut downs and some other things. But really, everyone gets back on board with trading. 3-4 months, it's kind of tough. You got to twist your arm of your league mate to get them to respond to an offer. And now here we are waking up. And I really do think that a lot of the free agency, a lot of the NFL-centric player analysis matters more to your dynasty teams and trading in that regard than it does specifically who do you take at 106. Big ramifications, obviously, and that's what we're going to focus on. But I really do think that the veterans are the ones in your lineup. The veterans are the ones paying the bills for now.
I think, and we'll get into all that tonight too. The other thing I wanted to bring up at the top of the show tonight, just so everybody's aware, our producer Matt Deutsch and I were talking right before we went on tonight, and he said, "How many orphans do you guys have left at the FFPC?" We're down to 9.
Wow.
This was thousands that we had.
Final countdown.
We are in the final countdown. We have 9 left that need to find good homes, good deals on them. You can pick them up right now, myffpc.com/dynasty. Those entry fees normally range between $77 and $5,000. Many of those have been discounted, so it's basically like a free team you have for year one. 1,800 plus leagues, and none have ever folded in 15 years with the FFPC. Check out the startups we got going at the $100 level, startup dynasties over at myffpc.com as well.
And that's half of what you sign up for. To be fair, again, great format, great everything. But you know what? A dynasty league that doesn't fold and it's going to be there next year, 5 years from now, that is what the VIG is for. That is what the commissioner services are for. Do not fold so that you can take over these teams, build them up. And when you're good, when you are good, when you're competing, it's yours forever.
And we also have too, and Chad, I don't know if have you ever played in an Empire Dynasty League before?
Yep. Okay. I'm currently in one where my co-owner and I, huge stakes this year. We won last year.
Oh boy!
And the team that won in year one, they're not eligible because they're eligible, but they really had an outlier year, a crazy finish that they fell off last year. We're basically competing against ourselves, and the prize pool is massive. So huge stakes now. We're going to be discussing trades like we've never had before because of the stakes and the output involved.
It's awesome. And we got Empire Leagues going on with the FFPC. And basically what that is if anybody wins the league, half the prizes are always set aside every year. And if anybody wins the league 2 years in a row, that league will fold. Yes. So the Empire League,
it doesn't fold. That dominant team shuts it down. Shuts it down. Exactly. Yes. That's how it works.
So the team that wins it 2 years in a row gets the entire Empire pot that's been accumulating for all those years or what have you. And then you're free to join a new Empire League. Okay. Yep. So that's going on. FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. Check that out. $1 million grand prize drafts going off right now, live and slow. The early Rampage and the 7 Bananas promo is live. And then I have to bring this up too, because we're up to almost 95% capacity in both the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball and Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball tournaments. $40,000 and $10,000 grand prize respectively. Enter for $125 or $35. Those drafts or that tournament, whether it is full or not, they will stop a week from today, April 24th, right before the NFL draft. And so get in while the getting's good. I think we have 4-hour and 6-hour drafts have been closed. We still might have 2-hour drafts. I don't know about that. I have to double check on that. But definitely sit and goes, 30-second clock, 60-second clocks. Those are available now at myffpc.com. So shout out to our producer, Matt Deutsch. Let's get into it. Chad, you've probably been, this is probably going to be a recurring theme tonight. I think you have been following a lot of these stories closer than I have. This one kind of, I don't want to say caught me off guard, but it's kind of weird. There's some malfeasance and skullduggery going on in New Orleans, allegedly. We don't know. Mike Triplett, who covers the Saints for New Orleans.football, excuse me. He says that his best guess is that Derek Carr is trying to get the Saints to part ways with him. The quote from Triplett's piece today, or this was through Tuesday. Either A, he legitimately is like, my shoulder has reached a point where I think I'd rather take care of it than play this season, or B, it's some sort of threat. Like, we asked for you guys to release us. You didn't. We were upset when you just restructured the contract instead of trying to work out a release. So now here's another path for us not showing us, and maybe now we'll force a release. Okay. Diana Rossini from The Athletic believes that Derek Carr does not want to have the Kirk Cousins treatment where the team does not believe in you long term. I mean, quite frankly, I think he should get the Kirk Cousins treatment as an outsider right now at this point. Mm-hmm. And apparently Nick Underhill is also seconding. I think Nick Underhill works for New Orleans.football as well. And he's saying the same thing, that Carr wanted out of New Orleans. He was upset when the contract got restructured. For fantasy, let's bring it back on the field. Wow, we have an NFL draft a week from today. The Saints hold what pick do they have? 8?
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. They have the 9 pick where they could take Shedeur Sanders. They could take Jaxson Dart. They could opt for Kirk Cousins himself. But right now, Derek Carr is on this roster. Not only does this affect the New Orleans quarterbacking situation for Superflex Dynasty leagues, at least for this season, Chad, but you think about how this is going to affect Kamara and Olave and Shaheed and Juwan Johnson, and then whatever pass catchers and skill position guys the Saints bring into this draft. What a mangled mess this is right now. How are you handling Derek Carr in your Superflex Dinos?
Yeah, what's crazy is Derek Carr is probably himself in a vacuum the least important piece here, because Derek Carr, let's face it, if Geno has been at a second round valuation in Superflex for about 3 years now, Derek Carr lesser than. So 3rd round, I mean, people are using that as a placeholder spot of like, maybe I should start a non-quarterback in my Superflex spot, is kind of how you've been viewing Derek Carr. He had that 2-week run. Saints were one of the best offenses in the NFL, short-lived. And here we are after another injury, and now more conversation of that. The most interesting aspect for me is twofold. Number one, at 9, the Shedeur Sanders part doesn't really fly for me. If you saw, there's a great piece going around right now. The fantasy footballers, they did a big study. A couple different guys have collaborated over the years looking at official visits. Shedeur Sanders has not met with the Saints, and every single first-round quarterback has met in official fashion with the team that ultimately drafted him. So Shedeur Sanders, at present, unless we're getting a fly-by-night late meeting here, that connection is not really there for 9 overall. Maybe if he falls, I mean, again, there's other things at play here. But I think unless a quarterback goes there at 9 overall, the Saints, Derek Carr is under contract. If this is shenanigans, like you said, he's there. He's there. And honestly, I don't think it's a Kirk Cousins situation of thinking a Michael Penix is coming through the door. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is on Penix's level, and I don't think any quarterback they drafted at 9 would be as much of a threat as Penix or, Bo Nix or any of those other quarterbacks that were available last year. Chris Olave is the guy that I would focus on the most. A lot of people are down on him in Dynasty. He has been great on a per route basis. It just has not turned into big fantasy production. The injuries are piling up, some concussion risk there for him, but it really has been, where's the quarterback? Where's the strong offense? He's had the target per route run. He's had the yards per route run. He just has not put it together to finish in the top 10 or 12 and really get on the map. So in my opinion, he's one of the best wide receivers. We know he's good, but it's a matter of, is he good for fantasy and when will that occur? So Olave is going to be the one. If Derek Carr, this continues to go down the road, they don't draft a quarterback at 9, he would be the one post-draft that I would be putting in offers for, because it's the You pass the sniff test. You're a good player. And frankly, Kamara's going to get his. Juwan Johnson has kind of fallen off from that rosy glow of potentially breaking out. But Olave can be had sometimes for less than a first-round pick. And sometimes it's in the later first. But you're not going to get that type of equity in the later first. You're maybe going to get Matthew Golden. If it's 1.5 for tight end, you would dream of getting Colston Loveland at 108, 109, 110. I think he's going to be long gone. So Chris Olave, I think when you get there in the later first, he's someone to potentially target if it continues down this road.
Olave on keep trade cut right now, wide receiver 28 behind Egbuka and Metcalf, right ahead of Jamison Williams and Terry McLaurin. But yeah, I think Olave, I think you're right. I think he's the one that's most interesting. And the guy who's the whole monkey wrench is, as you said, the least interesting with Derek Carr.
Right.
Travis Kelce, let's talk about him. This is a guy that, Chad, we may have talked about this before. I am a bag holder in Dynasty. It's probably the opposite way that an NFL team should handle it. I am more likely to hang on to a player 1 year too long than get rid of him a year or 3 too early. I have Travis Kelce in a couple of Dynasty leagues right now. I thought about getting rid of him last year. Didn't find, what I was looking for as far as a return. Then I risked, having him retire. He's coming back this year. But certainly there's a lot of things working against him. You think about his underlying numbers that he had last year, some of the worst of his career. Still really good for tight end. But you have Rashee Rice. You have Xavier Worthy. There could be a running back or another pass catcher or another tight end that enters the fray in Kansas City this year. Travis Kelce, knowing that it's not a great situation for him as far as Dynasty goes. Keep trade cuts number 20 tight end right now.
Wow.
Is it just almost better to have him on your roster this year than, schlepping him out for like a late second or a third round pick at this point? How do you feel about Kelce? Because quite frankly, what you say here is going to influence the way I'm going to probably be treating him in those Dynasty leagues I have him.
I'm like you. I think I'll phrase it this way too. Quarterback and tight end are the most difficult to get right. So once they tell us, and they literally beat it over our heads, I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. They do it year over year, and tight end especially. We have a very small subset. If we expand, not from 1 year, not to 2 years, to 5+ years, who is good? It's a very short conversation, and it includes very few names. George Kittle's on that name. Mark Andrews, we'll get to him. He's also on this list. But I'm with you that I remember back, Jason Witten is a low-level example. I want to focus on Tony Gonzalez. I mean, the number of times he went to Atlanta, and he was shot, right? A fraction of what he was in Kansas City, yet he churned out a few more top 10, top 12 seasons. I think he actually peaked out also much higher than that. He actually never finished outside tight end 7 in points per game for PPR. So Tony Gonzalez is a beacon example of you just ride these guys in their mid-30s. They're all-time players, not good for this decade, all-time players for fantasy. So Travis Kelce, he has a run now. I mean, it's most of his career. Top 6 finishes. He was number 6 last year in adjusted points per game. Again, even if that is his ceiling, he's still, who's going to pass him? He's not going to be tight end 10, tight end 12, tight end 15. Even if he is, that later second, good luck. I mean, you're drafting maybe someone like Harold Fannin. I mean, a later day 2 selection that's a rookie, and we know rookies develop very slowly. Sorry, Brock Bowers, you're the outlier of outliers. So, Kelce, I would just ride him, and you can't give him up. If we were talking right now, like, oh, is it 110 or Travis Kelce? Man, I could get that pick. I could maybe add something to it, turn it into Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren to reset the clock completely. Different conversation. But yeah, I wouldn't really worry about the floor here, because tight end, the floor is 0 for a lot of these guys. Yeah. And Kelce still, again, I think even if he is the third wheel in that offense and they start to gradually move away from him, like you said, the price point is the big part in a lot of these dynasty discussions, and Kelce regularly for a second.
So if somebody offers you the 208, let's say one quarterback league, 208, would you be giving Kelce up?
No. I think you got to get in a one quarterback, you got to get much closer to the first round, in my opinion. And the more I go with this, there's so many good profiles that you should just, in general, take the veteran. I know that the upside is there. Well, I could get this wide receiver right. But unless you're getting like a round one wide receiver, unless you're getting a round one tight end, you're really on spec here. And let's fast forward. It's about lineups, right? If Kelce gives you one more season in the top 8 to 10, that's worth more than taking a shot, no offense, on someone like Elijah Arroyo or taking a shot on all these guys are great and they're all going to contribute. Just go back and see what typically, and it'll make you quake and say, I can't, those guys are not in your lineup. Let's get to November. They're on your bench and you're like, an FFPC shallow roster, should I cut them? It is kind of like what you're thinking. And you almost feel guilty because I ended up drafting them in the late second round. I can't cut them.
Speaking of aging tight ends, Mark Andrews kind of in the news this week. Jeff Zarabek reported that Eric DeCosta, who is the Ravens GM, was quoted as saying, I never know what's going to happen in regards to whether Andrews was going to be on the team this year. Quote from DeCosta went on, I can tell you this, Mark Andrews is a warrior. He's a great player, and we're in the business of keeping as many great players as we can. Just a few weeks ago, John Harbaugh said he, quote, fully expected Andrews to be on the team this year. DeCosta would not go anywhere close to saying that. And now I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, who knows who knows Mark Andrews better than the Ravens? Probably nobody. And it sounds like they'd be willing in the right deal to move on from him, whether that's for a draft pick, another veteran, I don't know. But I think part of the reason I've liked Mark Andrews so much is that offense and how good it is and how well he's done it over the course of his career. But they do have Isaiah Likely there. And I feel like if Andrews goes to another place, it's hard for me to think that his dynasty value, Chad, is going to be the same or better. It's probably going to be worse.
Yeah, that's risky. A lot of times, and this is the biggest thing to watch in NFL free agency, when a player changes teams, I did a lot of research on this a few years ago. It's not a good thing. In general, it's not a good thing. And much of the numbers about, maybe it's good news, I'll tell you, it's basically two guys. Terrell Owens, if you remember, he bounced around, bit of a head case, but he was always productive. The other one is Randy Moss. If you remember, Randy Moss actually moved from the Raiders. Oh my God. So when you start comparing what they did at their previous stop to what they can do the next year, I mean, Randy Moss went from the Raiders disinterested to Tom Brady and setting records. So again, you see some outliers and they really distort the numbers. In general, if your team doesn't want you, the team doesn't think you're worth the money or offers you something market low, that's not a good thing. So it speaks to the team and personnel department that knows the most about you is saying, pass, or you think you're worth more. Bad combination. So the biggest thing here would be Mark Andrews leaving, not so much that he's suddenly an inferior profile. I do think, I have heard some comments, so we'll see how this turns out, but that, they view Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely not as comparable. So this has to be about money, or it has to be about, we are going to move on because we think in the next year or two we might move on anyway. Let's do it now. Let's see if Isaiah Likely is going to be someone we re-up. He's actually the one coming up on contract that they need to decide on in the next year or so. But Mark Andrews, still, remember the start, first 4, 5, 6 weeks last season. Isaiah Likely's great. What's Mark Andrews doing? The changing of the guard has occurred. Well, that whiplashed all the way around. Last year, Mark Andrews about 1.9 yards per route run. That's outstanding. And then Isaiah Likely 1.55. That's on the season. So it was very slanted over the last 10 weeks or so. And Mark Andrews, very short list. Active guys with more top 6 finishes: George Kittle, Travis Kelce, end of list. So wow. Mark Andrews is one of my guys. And again, I think Baltimore, with the way they like to throw over the middle, the way Lamar Jackson likes to throw to the tight end position, I think this would be a pretty big mistake, even though I like Charlie Kohler. I like some of these ancillary guys. They've drafted very well at the position, but I don't think Likely's on that level. So the biggest thing for us in fantasy is if Mark Andrews leaves, it's going to be the friendly confines that he once had, and he's basically the wide receiver one for that team. That is probably over. And that, more than anything about his profile, is probably the biggest thing to be concerned about, that maybe the ceiling of a top 3 finish might be gone for Andrews in the short term.
So if Andrews does move on from Baltimore, they don't do anything significant on day 1 or day 2. Does Zay Flowers increase in dynasty value quite a bit for you, Chad?
I think he has to. I don't think Isaiah Likely would be the guy that boosts up and he's a top 3 fantasy option at the position. I think that's highly contested. Andrews can challenge there, but I don't think a Likely can in that situation. And yeah, Zay Flowers. I think the Baltimore is a sneaky play to add a wide receiver. We know that they constantly add guys that don't pan out or anything. But yeah, Zay Flowers, the shorter game, I think they would get some more prescribed, over routes and crossers and things like that. That Mark Andrews has really thrived within that offense. But the red zone, I actually think that might end up fueling Lamar Jackson a little more as a runner, because that's somewhere where Mark Andrews, even when he wasn't getting big volume, you'd see him, he was averaging like a touchdown per game, big red zone threat there. And yet, we look, and if that is gone, I think Lamar Jackson would have to find another easy button to press.
I want to skip ahead real quick because there's a conversation going on in the chat on YouTube right now with Bill Hollywood and Cullen Hoffman. And we're talking about these guys when they go to new teams and how it's usually bad news. Bill Hollywood wants to know, is Cooper Kupp one of those guys moving on from the Rams to Seattle? And Cullen chiming in, talking about how good of an organization the Rams are, and they were willing to get rid of Kupp. And so he would agree that this is one of those guys. Sounds like you think the exact same thing. For anybody thinking that there's going to be a fantasy renaissance for Cooper Kupp in Seattle, Chad, they're probably going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah. And again, Cooper Kupp, very elite during his career. He had one of his worst seasons last year. Now, his threshold for what is a good season for Cooper Kupp is very high. He finally dipped below the 2-yard per route run, kind of elite Mendoza line that you're typically looking for, but he fell down. We've been seeing Puka Nacua take over this offense. And I really think the Rams, like you mentioned, they're preemptive, also know that they are one of the stickiest franchises in terms of using the Zebra technology, GPS, and all of that tracking that goes beyond the, what did the 40 run? Did this guy pull away, in this one situation or whatever, kind of the face value things that we look at. But Puka Nacua is ready. He's actually more superior on a per route basis than Cooper Kupp was years ago in his prime. So they figure, we have someone in-house, cheaper for now. Cooper Kupp, we get, 32 years old. He's fallen off. Let's turn the page now. I really am interested. They brought in Davante Adams. I think that they need to add a tight end. I think they're in the perfect spot. Maybe they don't get the guy in round 1, but I would watch for them to take a dynamic option. Tyler Higbee, no offense to you, but they're going to rework this offense. And Cooper Kupp, we just didn't see the guy that can separate all those typical Cooper Kupp routes and easy touches went to Nacua. They've changed the guard. And yes, Cooper Kupp, I would be very concerned about him because you go down in quarterback, you go down in infrastructure for this Seattle team, and Seattle has a boatload of picks. So they're going to do something, one or two things at the pass catcher positions because they have so many picks in the first 3-4 rounds. So I would say Cooper Kupp, be very worried. The biggest thing I see in these situations in profile analysis is the ceiling comes down. So the probability of Cooper Kupp in a top 12, top 18 type season, it goes through the floor in these settings. It's not 0, but it's single digits, and that makes it really tough to bank on the older guy because they're also the type, when they fall off a little, they can start falling off a lot. And it feels like Cooper Kupp 2025 might be that case.
Yeah, I think you're right. I always say too, Chad, like if to dumb it down to Dynasty 101, this is a young man's game. And when I start to, it's always easier for me to see the paths to success. It's easier for me to see the ceilings for these younger guys, and these older guys, man, like Kupp and Kelce. Yeah, there's still a pathway there, but it gets more and more difficult to see. And
tight end 7 to 8 is easier in terms of like auto start player. Cooper Kupp finishes at wide receiver 40. It's a train wreck, right? You're like, I don't even know if I'm starting him. What's the ceiling? And one example of the other way, again, you're only worried when the cracks in the foundation start to show. Mike Evans hasn't shown cracks, right? And guess what? Nothing's changing with him. Baker Mayfield's still there. Hey, Mike Evans, you're the guy. We're going to project you to score 10, 12 plus touchdowns. Life is good. You did in the road last year. So we have less worry there than Cooper Kupp. Rams are worried about you. They move on. New quarterback, new team, new all this. A lot more risk in that profile.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's good that you brought that up too, that we feel a lot more comfortable about the guys we have not seen lose a half step or a half or a full step or whatever. When we're looking at those guys, It's easier. Like I have Mike Evans on a few of my dynasty teams. I've never once thought about selling high on him. Maybe I should have, but I've never thought about it. I'm like, look, this guy is a known quantity. He has shown me nothing that he's, about to go off a cliff or anything like that. Good example on that too. I think you could say this, similar for Davante Adams now in Los Angeles. What I saw last year was him connecting with Rodgers, and while the Jets as a team weren't good, I saw a lot of good things from them. And now he gets Matthew Stafford. This is another guy that I think like I can get away with another year, probably more than 1 year, with Davante Adams in Los Angeles. Your immediate reaction, I know it's not on the show sheet, immediate reaction when you saw Adams going to the Rams, I felt great about it. How did you feel?
Love it. Nakua is the guy that can kind of win in unique ways. Davante Adams can be that bucket getter. It's 3rd and 6, ISO him on the outside, and he wins. The Rams, we saw how close they were on the NFL side to doing big things last year. They were a drive away from taking out the Eagles, closest team to do that down the stretch run of their Super Bowl season. So I think when you put McVay with Stafford, with Adams, that trio right there, professionalism, and they're going to scheme it up. So I view that as a huge win. Now, the biggest thing is, fantasy production wise, is Nakua going to lose a little bit? Is Adams more like a wide receiver 2 in fantasy than a wide receiver 1? Or if a guy gets hurt, whatever. But I think at full strength, the Rams are going to be that dynamic offense. And that's why I really hone in on tight end. If they get a little more dynamic nature to that position, wheels up on, there isn't really no ceiling for this offense. But yeah, Adams, huge winner there. And that's one exception where you say Rams, a little dysfunctional. And the exception to this changing teams things is, number one, he got big money. He was actually appealing, in free agency where he might have to settle for a 1 for 10, kind of prove it. NFL doesn't like you. So he got good money, and he goes to a proven offensive system where nothing else was changing. It's not like they're suddenly in a rebuild, or he's like, I guess I got to go play with Aaron Rodgers again. Like, it's none of those things. So yeah, a lot of positives with Adams.
Getting back to the veteran tight ends, Evan Engram has moved on. He is switching teams from Jacksonville to Denver. And Sean Payton has all but confirmed, or maybe he just did confirm, that Engram is going to be the Joker this year in his offense. This is a guy that I remember his days in New York. Like, we were just like, God, if this guy could ever stay healthy. And then he did. And he caught, 114 balls in 2023, and then he got hurt again in 2024. But when he was healthy, he was a difference maker. Now he gets to go to Denver, an up-and-coming offense, a team that's probably going to be adding a first or a second-round running back to lead their rushing game. They already have their first-round franchise quarterback in Bo Nix last year, who showed out. And why wouldn't he? Because he's like 38 years old already. Cortland Sutton found the phone of youth. You have these other, I wouldn't say that they're good, complete receivers, but they fulfill a role, right? Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin. And then you add Evan Engram to this. I think this is really an interesting situation. You said, and I happen to agree with you, when players switch teams, it's usually not great, at least in the first year. But I am a little bit more bullish for Engram for the reasons I just said. And the other thing is, it's tight end, which is always kind of a crazy, like, kind of find value where you can. Hopefully it works out. Keep Trade Cut has him behind actually Mark Andrews right now. They got Evan Engram at tight end 14. Is he in for a big 2025 this year, Chad?
At present, yes. And I like to play out scenarios. We'll know next week with the draft. They have been in. Broncos have had a lot of visits with running back. You would expect that, but wide receiver plus tight end. So I think the tight end might be a matter of they're at pick 20, so it'll depend who is there. If it's not in the first round, I don't think we can have much fear in that capacity. The other thing I would say is wide receiver, slow burn, and probably not going to affect Evan Engram this season. Cortland Sutton, to be fair, hasn't really been a lid lifter in terms of his upside. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's going to affect Evan Engram as well. So this has the best chance to be almost like a couple of years ago in Jacksonville when he was healthy and he had one of his best seasons ever. So Evan Engram, sneaky productive. And like you said, found the Joker. Everyone was projecting a tight end. I think it was Colston Loveland at 20 to Denver for about 3 months straight. Then Evan Engram goes there. All of a sudden that dries up. So I think it's less likely. And when I look at the construction, they have a bunch of guys at wide receiver, but not the guy. So I
Right.
really do think this bodes well for Engram as long as it stays static. I don't even know if taking a guy at 20 at wide receiver will affect Engram in the short term as much. So unless they draft tight end in the first round, I'm not overly worried. And I do think we're going to see, like you said, what was it, 14, tight end 14? That is a pretty good value there, because what you want is a tight end 2 that can play like a top 5 or 6 guy. We've seen that from Engram. And like you said, he found Sean Payton found his joker. And this is what we want. We want the potential for big volume. Engram is someone, since he left the Giants, he has had a really strong target per route run. And that's one of the stickiest things. You can get by on not being a giant maven in terms of yards, but man, if you can dominate your passing game in that way, which Engram has in Jacksonville, that really bodes well for your potential to be a Kelce and Andrews, a Kittle type that can lead your team.
I know a lot of people are. I think when I lead off the show with all these veterans, it's selfish, Chad, because we've been talking rookies since like January, right?
I know.
And so it's sort of like having our dessert to start the show. Now we got to eat our vegetables by talking about some of these rookies again. But
you can still put Shedeur Sanders in the title. You could still.
Well, we still could. Yeah, that's a possibility. You know what's funny? Like, and I don't know. Maybe this is a hole in my
do a mock draft starting in 5 minutes. We're gonna do a mock draft.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe this is a hole in my production, my putting the content together. I have not talked to a whole lot of Shedeur Sanders this off season, or this drafting season. Cam Ward always seemed to be the more exciting player. I didn't talk a whole lot of Jaxson Dart until like the last month, when it seemed like he was creeping up boards, and I think Cullen Hoffman said in the chat maybe he goes at number 9 to New Orleans. I mean, that's a possibility as well. But Shedeur Sanders is a player that I think Greg Cosell was saying this the other day. If you take a lot of sacks in college, those players tend to take a lot of sacks in the pros. He does not have the greatest legs in the world, but he is pretty good downfield. He's a pretty accurate passer. And quite frankly, outside of that, I mean, for fantasy, you obviously want more. But outside of that, I mean, if you can throw with anticipation, throw with accuracy, that can go a long way in the NFL. So Shedeur Sanders, I'll ask you this. Not the most exciting guy in the world, but landing spot is going to be key, obviously, for him. But I could project a pretty good career for Sanders, if not a spectacular fantasy career for him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. My biggest take is that the folks that have Cam Ward way up here and Shedeur Sanders way down here, I think that is the wrong take. Ward is going to go 101. So that kind of ends the conversation, because they're similar guys. Neither one is going to win as a rusher. And what we do is say we need fantasy points. And so if you don't run, it makes it very difficult. Look at CJ Stroud. He had a great rookie season. This past year, were people excited about him for fantasy? Not really, because he didn't take a step forward. He wasn't Tua a few years ago when he led the league in passing. Is kind of what it takes. Joe Burrow's not a big runner. He has some of the best weapons out there. So you put all that together, and again, Ward, Sanders, neither one's going to be a big runner. And my biggest thing is the gap between them should not be much. Now, the NFL may put a big gap for us. 101 matters for the pedigree, and Shedeur Sanders is not going there. But my biggest take is Cam Ward is overrated. I think Shedeur Sanders is properly rated. We know the NFL props up quarterbacks. Most classes, someone's going to go 101 because that team is horrible and they need a quarterback. And that's the way. And you can't just trot out Will Levis because they're trying to save it. I mean, again, that should be what they do. They should sit there and draft Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter and say, we don't have a quarterback with a close enough grade to draft quarterback, so live with it. So we're just going to re-rack this for next year.
Or trade down. You can trade down as well.
Sure.
Let somebody else go get Cam Ward.
But yeah, this whole idea that last year, the quarterback profiles were worthy of where they went. All of them, in my opinion. I was alone on Bo Nix a little bit of saying, I think he's a first round guy and I think he's a top half guy. Ended up, at least for 1 year, looking more right than wrong. But I think that Shedeur Sanders, he has a 23% pressure to sack rate. Cam Ward has 21%. That's not a big enough gap. And I know he recycles back and he fades back and he loses big yards. You know what? Colorado, all we talked about was how bad their offensive line was. Yeah. Again, put yourself in the pocket with a horrible offensive line. You've literally got guys that are going to be checking people out at Dollar General in a few years, and that is protecting your blind side. I would probably back up instead of go forward too. So we'll see. I will, just like Drake May, we said the supporting cast around him at UNC was horrible. The Patriots within NFL were horrible, yet he looked just fine. So with Shedeur Sanders, I'm giving him, I mean, his big time throw ratio is outstanding and way better than Cam Ward's. I give Shedeur Sanders a pretty good shot and a better shot than a lot of people. We'll see, though. Again, if the NFL fades him down the board to the moon, then that is going to be a big factor because quarterback, huge need for 3 or 4 teams. And if they don't even explore trading up into the first round, I think that'll be very, very telling.
Percentage chance that Sanders is a first-round pick a week from today?
I don't know. I struggle to think how can he not be? So I'm going to say
like 80,
90%.
90. Okay. All right. There you go.
Very high.
Now a guy who's basically 100% to go in the first round and probably at the 101 is Cam Ward. Yeah. Titans insider Terry McCormick. Now I don't know if Titan Insider is a Tennessee Titans like team run site or if it's a fan site. Exactly. There's a lot of sugary goodness here about Cam Ward in this piece. Yep. Apparently, the Titans had an 18-minute conversation at the scouting combine with Ward, and that was the quote big turning point in how they felt about how they timed it out.
14 minutes, I'm not reacting. 18, all in.
Well, is it would 20 have been better? Would 20 have been worse? Like they spent that extra time with them. Is that good or like what's the sweet spot? Apparently,
they found out I'm a Sagittarius. I like long walks on the beach.
Yeah, and just the best way to have his steak cooked, everything. So anyway. Ward apparently wowed the people at his top 30 visit for Tennessee with his, quote, alpha personality, astute knowledge of the game, and his detailed understanding of the quarterback position. Then the Titans sent a ton of people to his pro day, which had a private workout attended by Amy Adams Strunk, who apparently is reclusive. But she wanted to check out Cam Ward.
Came out of the woodwork for Cameron Ward.
Absolutely. You said he's overrated. I think you're right. In a sense, I think that, and you kind of hit on this. The NFL has told us over the past however many years, if you have the 101, you have to take a quarterback, and if you're not taking a quarterback there, you got to trade the pick. So, and Tennessee needs a quarterback, so perhaps they feel pigeonholed into taking him. But this is not. Cam Ward would not have been a 101 last year. Where would he have even ranked if he was in last year's class? Would he even been top 5 or top 6 for quarterbacks? And what is his bust potential in the pros? We don't often think about a bust at the 101 because you could have anybody you want. Why would you take a bust? But there is a significant amount of risk here with Ward. There's parts of his game I like, parts of it I don't. I'll let you talk about Cam Ward here and his bust potential. And Chad, where you would have ranked him if he was in last year's quarterback class.
Yeah. Well, it's quarterback 7 teaser there for last year. And with the run, I mean, I guess the Raiders would have taken him over Brock Bowers because they were really not happy with that run of 6 and 12 picks there at quarterback where they desperately needed/wanted one. Cam Ward for me. And here's the 2 things. Number 1, he had a few different stops. Incarnate Ward. Okay. So he comes off the radar. He was not dominant in Incarnate Ward. Let's let that sit in. We're talking about a guy drafted at 101. Then he goes to Washington State. He was not dominant at Washington State. This is the 101. Then he goes to Miami. Everyone lauds him. Again, he was a day 3 guy a year ago. Day 3. I don't know what that advisory grade said. I guarantee it wasn't the first round or 2. So he goes into Miami. He has a better year. He has his best year. But when you compare it to guys rising up like Joe Burrow and others, where it really is based on one season, it wasn't as good as it needs to be. So again, I look at career aggregate stuff, and especially in Cam Ward's case, he was playing lower level of competition. Shouldn't a future 101, shouldn't a future franchise-changing quarterback play better than he did for 4+ years before he got to Miami? My answer is yes. If he goes 1, and again, this is minus 10 million in the betting markets. So when he goes 101, he will be the weakest 101 I have in my entire quarterback projection model, and it's not close. The only overdrafted guy that is remotely close to this, drafted as high as he's going to go, is Daniel Jones, who went 6 overall. And again, he had the rushing. The one thing we say he does in the NFL, right, is run like a reindeer, and he can run for a 40-yard touchdown. We question everything else. Heck, he might be the Colts starter this year. But Cam Ward, I think and again, I feel like I'm an outlier because all you listen to these NFL shows and they're just like Cam Ward 101, best quarterback in the class. Like I have him, but a lot of people say like I have him graded as like a mid first, or like they say they have a first round grade. I don't think you can sit here and say your 25th player on your board, Cam Ward, because he plays quarterback, you have to take him at 1. But they're in a box, like you said. The problem, one thing I've talked about on Dynasty Think Tank, we talk about a lot of macro stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is NFL front offices are and ownership are on a different timetable than coaches trying to save their job. So you've got front offices and coaches saying, we've got to win as many games as possible. We can't, like, if they were to punt on quarterback, they win 3 games and they get fired. But the best thing for the team is to do that, because if you whiff on this pick, you just burned a 101, your most valuable asset in your entire franchise, because your coach is saying, well, we get our chance to pick a quarterback. We got to pick whoever we want. Yet it might be the worst thing for the franchise because there's no allegiance. There's no continuity for everyone being on the same page of let's be the best team we can as soon as we can, but it may not be 2025. So that is, I think, a lot of the problems and why a lot of these teams struggle to get better.
I always kind of like the idea, Chad, about if I'm a GM or if I'm a head coach, putting off drafting a quarterback in the first round as long as possible, because I feel like it gives you job security. And at the end of the where you have the owner meets at the end of the year and like, well, yeah, we went 9-8, but we didn't have my quarterback. We didn't have a quarterback. What am I going to do? I'm not going to overdraft a quarterback just to say I have a quarterback. And then you keep kicking that can down the road. And eventually something should happen where you do get a guy you like. But yeah, I think it's important. And it's easy for us to sit here and say, hey, we wouldn't take Cam Ward at the 101. If we're Brian Callahan, I don't know who took over for Rand Carthon in Tennessee. Was it the guy from Kansas City? I can't remember who came over. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously different timeline for them than us.
We might touch on this, but again, what is wrong with passing on quarterback early? This is the perfect class. Why not take Jalen Milroe early in the second round? Why not look at Tyler Shuck? Why not look at Riley Leonard? Why not take a couple of these guys between round 2 and round 4 or 5? What is wrong with that? They got Will Levis at a quote unquote value last year. So you addressing quarterback does not mean it has to be the first pick in the draft. Yeah. There's a myriad of options to give your team hope for the future. And again, not put so much premium on, we have to get this one thing right.
Well, wouldn't the counter to that be the hit rate of non-first round quarterbacks in the NFL is so low that like you feel like you have to take one because you get a much better chance of hitting on one. Whereas if you take one on day 2 or day 3, you're not as likely to hit on that pick, and then it sets your franchise. I guess it wouldn't set your franchise back because it's not the first round. But at the same time, you feel like you could probably do, you either take quarterback in the first round or you don't take quarterback. I'm not saying I think that.
No, but that's the counter. Correct.
That's the counter. Yeah.
All 32 teams are looking at it. Well, I would say like half the teams are looking at it like, hey, we're open to taking a quarterback, which I think more than half the league should be open to taking a quarterback just at a point of, the first 3, 4, 5 rounds or whatever. But yes, that every team is looking at it. It's the pinnacle of the front office of what are we going to do at this position to get better, to compete with Mahomes and Allen and Jaxson and all these guys. So I get it that the attention is going to be there, but we've seen a number of hits from day 2. We've seen enough value come from there. And the other thing, again, this is not a hubris thing, but if you get guys with certain profiles, it is more likely to hit than taking Quinn Ewers. Not to isolate him as a bad pick that's coming up, but just there are ways to optimize your odds a little bit. And I know front offices will work on margins and say, if we can have a 22% hit rate versus an 11% hit rate, both are not good, but it's better.
Here, I thought I built the show that Quinn Ewers wouldn't be taking any strays tonight, and then it happens anyway. I'll tell you what, I'll be perfectly honest with you. 2 months ago, I never thought I would be talking about this guy seriously going in the first round. Maybe not even going on day 2. That might be a little bit harsh. But Jalen Milroe now, Chad, and I haven't looked at the latest on the betting markets, but we're talking about him being not only a second-round pick, but potentially a first-round pick. He was also invited to the NFL draft in Green Bay. And
he accepted.
He accepted, yes. 17 players have agreed to show up in Green Bay for the NFL draft, and Milroe is one of them. So I'll just point blank right now. Number 1, 2-part question. Number 1, will he be a first-round pick? And number 2, should he be a first-round pick, knowing what he does and knowing what he has not been able to do on the field to this point in his football career.
Yeah, he's definitely the wild card in the class. I liken him to Lamar Jackson in the sense of you hear a lot of discussions on if he doesn't work out at quarterback, he actually athletically can work out at another position, which almost no quarterback we say that. Milroe is an unbelievable athlete. What he provides as a runner, the legs, the stress test on a defense, he throws a good deep ball. He has some positives, but man, rough around the edges. He's the perfect day 2 pick. Is that at round 2? Is that top 40? I'm not going to get into that, but he's the ideal. Like Jalen Hurts drafted behind Carson Wentz. That was perfect. Perfect. We had some questions and you got to draft him with a non-premium. I would love Milroe to go to a low pressure spot. Now, the problem is, like you said, quarterbacks don't fall. Quarterbacks don't go out there, but it looks like Jaxson Dart, he's trending more towards being a round 1 lock. Milroe now is the tweener of does he or doesn't he? I will say one thing I dug into is the fallacy of the whole 5th-year option thing. If you're good, you don't really get to the 5th-year option. It's not really a thing that is super valuable to the NFL team because if you're good, you're signed before that, and it's not really a big deal.
Are you speaking, just real quick, Chad, are you speaking in a quarterback sense or just any position sense?
Mostly in a quarterback sense, but this whole, like, we say it every year, and it becomes, in my opinion, just the way that we discuss, which is, oh man, you trade back into round 1, you get the 5th-year option, for these quarterbacks. Again, you're not getting there. You're not getting there. It's going to be very binary in their first 2-3 years. And this whole, like, pick up the 5th-year option. I think more teams should play out the 5th-year option. I think more teams, again, I'm the Bears should have kept Justin Fields. So there's a lot of stuff going on here of just, you want more quarterbacks that you think can possibly play in your building. You don't want one starter, and then if they don't work out, we're trash and we lose every game. And then we hopefully are not in a Cam Ward class the next year. We could draft high and solve our problems with a whole new front office. So, I think Milroe, ultimately, I'm going to say no, because I think he's going to have to be QB4. We have questions about Shedeur Sanders falling. So I think Milroe, is not going to go ahead of him, in my opinion. So I think he's the perfect, he's not going to make it past 45 or 50. There's going to be a team that either moving to shakes or it's the perfect opportunity for one of these teams up high in the draft. The Giants might be a good choice, that they have enough at quarterback. I mean, heck, they brought in Russell Wilson and James Winston, and now maybe you circle back, take an upside shot like Tennessee did with Will Levis, right? A guy that they think might turn into something. And Milroe, I'll just put my chip on round 2, first half.
I think it'd be wild, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. It probably won't. Wouldn't it be crazy if Shedeur Sanders was the 4th quarterback chosen in this draft after all this pomp and circumstance we had all drafting season with Cam Ward going 101, and then obviously we just talked about Milroe potentially being a first-round pick. Jaxson Dart is another player, and Cullen brought this up. I've seen it in mock drafts out there too, Chad, with him being the choice for the Saints at 9. He has met with the Saints, I believe, and he seems to be a fit in what type of offense Kellen Moore likes to run. Is it New Orleans or bust? Like if the Saints don't take him, it's going to be on somebody else trading up to get him at the end of the first round. How do you look at Dart? Because I think this would change his dynasty value, whether he's a first round pick or not.
Yes. And I would say, again, he's a really good combination. I could argue Milroe with the passing deficiencies. I think Dart of the first 4 or 5 guys is the most complete quarterback profile. So that's for fantasy. That's for NFL. It's very Bo Nix-esque, where it's got enough rushing in there that it's appealing, and yet he doesn't have any big red flags as a passer. So again, 79% passing score in my model, 56% rushing. If you're over about 50, 60% rushing, you can do some damage. And we saw him with some of that designed run game, some of the scrambling data points that he has, better than Sanders, better than Ward, not than Milroe. But yeah, I think it's the Saints. And then I think the Steelers are the other spot. What are those two teams going to do? I don't think the Colts go in that direction, even though, again, they're a team in the first 3-4 rounds. I would watch them just because bring in Daniel Jones. If Anthony Richardson has a short yank, this year, I think you want as many balls up in the air and a potential chance to find something midstream with a guy. So they're a team that I think they should project ahead and almost draft someone in the first 3-4 rounds. But yeah, Dart, He's not going to make it to round 2. It's somewhere in round 1 there. And I think his profile is very valid to say he goes. And what you kind of said, almost a doomsday of like, no one's talking about this, but what if Dart's QB2? What if Sanders is falling? And heck, you get in the late first and a team's like, let's take Milroe developmentally instead of Shedeur Sanders, because people are talking about Sanders as like, a high floor but low ceiling option.
Yeah.
And I don't think if you're trying to solve quarterback, that's what people ultimately are looking to do from a team build.
Yeah, no, definitely not. You want to hit a home run when you're paying a home run price. You don't want to swing for a double, although a double might be able to get it done in the right situation. I'm going to ask you this too. The FFPC obviously doesn't have the rookie dynasty drafts until after the draft. I know some people have them before, which is wild and fun. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it'd be fun. As it stands right now, if you were somehow in an FFPC tight end premium super flex rookie dynasty draft, you have the one. Let's say you in a vacuum you have the 101, but in another league you also have the 102. Who would those top 2 picks be?
Yeah. So I'll just say 1.5 tight end premium. My research is it doesn't move the needle quite as much as the market moves it for us. Generally, I would say my league mates or overall, it's when you get to 1.75 and especially 2.0 PPR for tight end, or if you start 2, that's when we're going to get in the conversation where Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, they're top 3-4 picks. And there's arguments that they shouldn't never go lower than that when you get hyper premiums. For me, I like to, big ceiling, but I would also say when you get a first round running back, and Sony Michel might be one example where this is not true, but as long as they check the boxes, this is a warranted first round running back type profile and they go there. If you get them outside of 101, you should just, hey, if I'm at 102, 103, whatever, I still think back to the Christian McCaffrey class where he went like 5. That might have been the best moment ever to sit there and go, well, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. Like the profile made so much sense. And then you reap the rewards like the Mackinac Peaches. So I will say this. So Ashton Genty, 101, you can just put that in pen for me. And then Omarion Hampton, his Vegas line right now, his over-under is about 19.5, which obviously pivots right there at that Pittsburgh Steelers pick or Denver Broncos, like right there in that zone. So that's no surprise. So he's a basic lock. If you put he's 10 plus picks inside of that first round line. So we're looking at Genty, Hampton, first round guys. I have a hard time thinking anyone's going to crack that. Any sort of landing spot, hey, Dallas goes running back in the second round. You can't react to situation that much when you're dealing with apex pedigree tier lines like a round 1 running back. So Genty, Hampton, pretty much locked in for me because again, we already kind of know the quarterback stuff going on. Cam Ward at 101 isn't going to move the needle enough for me. Wide receiver, it's kind of trending the wrong way as opposed to the right way, down the board as opposed to up. So yeah, I think there's a possibility this year that I even have 3 running backs, 1, 2, 3. But right now we're sitting at 2, and then I have some possibilities, that we get another one added on there.
Fascinating stuff. And we're going to talk about running backs here in a second. What I want to do is step out, take a quick break. When we come back, Chad, I want to talk with you about some of the lessons you've learned for Dynasty from the NFL draft over the years, mistakes you've made, stuff you've learned from mistakes, and then stuff that you will not do this year because it's something you make that mistake once and you move on. I want to lead off with that. And then I also want to bring in a running back discussion with you. We're going to talk about that 2017 class compared to 2025. I want to talk about TreyVeon Henderson, Kaleb Johnson, Cam Skattebo as well. So much more to get to. He's Chad Parsons from Under the Helmet Dynasty, the Dynasty think tank at Footballguys. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Don't go anywhere. We roll on right after this.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm. And for me, the football season never sleeps. It doesn't. I don't care if the Super Bowl's over. I'm still rocking and rolling. And the best way to do that is with Dynasty Fantasy Football because you can play all year round and you can get started right now. You can go in and play 2 different ways at myffpc.com. You can do a startup draft where you can go in and draft all the players from scratch and load up on rookie picks, especially if you like this rookie class. You want, Cam Ward or Ted McMillan. You can load up on those picks, get all those players, lock them in for the rest of their careers. Or you can go over and play a different way. You can pick up an orphan team. Sometimes people decide they don't want to play. FFPC will never fold those leagues. They just put those teams back up. and you can bid on them. You can pick them up and take over those teams, right? You check out what kind of picks they have, what kind of players they have. Sometimes you can even get a discount. Just make sure it's a team you like, grab them, and you're off and running. And then you're ready for this draft when it comes around at the end of April here. MyFFPC.com. If you've never played, use promo code ALARM. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more for your first time. And you can go get set up. You can do a startup. You can pick up an orphan team. You can start playing Dynasty right now, the game that never sleeps, the game that goes all year round.
Talking with Chad Parsons here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Eric Balkman coming at you with some FFPC knowledge. Want to let you know that Dynasty Orphans are down to 9. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. 1,800 plus leagues. None have folded in the last 15 years. MyFFPC.com is where to go to pick up one of those last few orphan teams or sign up for one of the startup drafts that we have posted at the $100 level there as well. Chad, you have done work with Footballguys. You and Jordan McNamara do a great job in the Dynasty think tank. Tell us a little bit more about Under the Helmet Dynasty, which I think you do a fantastic job with all the content that you're churning out there.
Yeah, Under the Helmet has been a flagship podcast. I started in 2011, and that was before podcasting was cool. I actually told my wife today that that High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is something that I've listened to for years, and so that has been, the foundational, bottom of the pyramid that podcasting was not easy back then. You had to call in on phones and lots of wires, and again, people do it from their phones now, so it's craziness. But yes, Under the Helmet, it's approaching episode 1000. So it used to be weekly. Now it's like 5 days a week on the Believe Network, and talks about Dynasty, Fantasy, NFL. We stream through a few different things, and that has turned into a uthdynasty.com website. So that's Dynasty centric, very analytical heavy. You get premium podcasts, all that trade calculator, good stuff. And draft season is where you want to be there. But get people in the door. The free content 5 days a week is Under the Helmet podcast.
Under the Helmet, UnderTheHelmetDynasty.com, Chad, or
UTHDynasty.com.
Yeah. And then obviously check out the Believe Network for the Under the Helmet podcast as well. It's wild to think about. Like HSFF Hour we're coming up on the 14th season. And I think about how we used to do podcasting back then compared to how we do it now. I have been slow to evolve. I'll be the first one to admit. But I have evolved, and so has the show. So good stuff there. And we will make sure that we're obviously listening to as much as we can. Dynasty season, Dynasty season is 365 days a year now. The lessons you've learned, Chad, from the NFL draft over the years, the lessons you've learned from stuff that happens that you either overemphasized in your Dynasty rookie drafts or your Dynasty leagues, the stuff that you did not give enough credence to. Basically, what I'm asking you here is for people who maybe are not as accomplished, not as experienced in Dynasty, that are watching this right now, what advice would you give them? What have you learned over the years so they can avoid making the same mistakes you did back in the day?
Yeah, two things I would weave together. Number one, I'll use a player example. I use Jeff Janis 5 times a year as a player example, which is I used to fall in love with the size, speed, low pedigree wide receivers, some small school guys. And what's funny is now I view low pedigree at wide receiver, non-round one. Like I am so stringent with pedigree because I know the rabbit hole you fall into, because you can have, you have a 20-man roster. All of a sudden you got 9-10 wide receivers. And when you get to October and actually running your team, what's the point? You're starting 2, 3, 4 of them, and you've got 9 or 10. And really what happens in season is you want to start running backs. You want Tyler Algier, because he's going to go from your bench to Bijan Robinson goes out and he's in your lineup. Unequivocally, you're starting him. That week, I don't know, I'll figure it out. He's in there. I'm benching some pretty good wide receiver. I'm putting Tyler Algier, the workhorse, in that lineup. So I would say not falling into the trap of lower pedigree wide receivers. And a lot of times you hear NFL shows, and again, I know this is part of the job, and yes, we are looking at the good qualities of these players, but look back at the Malachi Corleys of the world, and just there's a dozen guys that go between round 2 and round 4 every year that people just unequivocally say, this guy's good. Everybody's good. It's a hard depth chart to crack. In the NFL, if the Rams draft a wide receiver, let's be honest, do we care? They're behind Puka Nacua and Davante Adams,
Right,
craftsmen of the position. Like, they're not cracking anything. They'll be lucky to get 20 targets. So we really don't care. So I would say the biggest thing I've learned over like a decade plus is in your rookie draft, number one is wide receivers be very, very careful and very selective if they're not a round one pick. So watch guys like a Hawk again. I got a couple I like. I like Jaden Higgins and a few others, but price is going to be the big important factor. And frankly, some of these teams and some of these shallower formats, there's no room. You just can't. Then the other thing I would say is the biggest thing I've learned is I used to have all these rookie picks, and the idea was I'm going to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm going to draft all these rookies, and they're going to turn into Pro Bowlers in the NFL and dominant starters on my fantasy team. And I'm going to win the team by also being the youngest team in the league. We've talked about Davante Adams and Mike Evans, and they pay bills. Travis Kelce, he pays bills. So I think one of the biggest things is when you get into your rookie draft, I am more open. The last couple of years, especially, when I get on the clock, I want to see who is the best veteran I can get. What do I need? Do I need a big-time wide receiver? Do I need, now that we're, in May and June, we know the running back landscape a lot more clearly than we do in April or in February. So you can be more open. But people are willing to sell their souls / auto start veterans to get 107 and potentially get to draft Emeka Egbuka that may or may not work out into anything. So people think about the market value a lot. They go, man, if I just have all these shiny wide receivers, they're all going to work out, and I'm going to have this core of 23-year-olds, and they're all going to be hyper productive. And that's their goal. And yet what typically happens is a mishmash of, well, this guy kind of hit, he's wide receiver 30 this year, but he's super exciting, right? Well, you lost. You finished last in your league, but it's super exciting. You earned 101 the next year. Well, who are you going to draft? Is that guy going to help you win?
A receiver in the first round. That's
sure. Yeah, I'm going to draft Jeremiah Smith next year. And it's going to be awesome. It's just so the point is you keep going. And so the goal is number one to win. And I would say if you just get on the clock every time, you have as many rookie picks as you want. But sometimes the unsexy trades, you get on at 208, you trade for Evan Engram. And you're like, hey, I needed a tight end. Someone ended up picking Harold Fannin or insert round 3 wide receiver X. Mm-hmm. You got Evan Engram. You're going to plug and play him week 1. He's a good player. He's crossed a lot of barriers in the NFL. And yeah, is he a little older? Is he going to fall off next year? Probably not. So I would just say the two things are I've started to, eschew wide receiver in general in rookie drafts. And then I've also started to explore a lot more moving and shaking and trading within the rookie drafting prism, and not saying I'm going to get my guy at 104 and then I'm going to get my guy at 110 and 205 and keep going. And all of a sudden you look up and a third of your roster is rookies. Well, that's very difficult to sharpshoot that and being happy, plus also winning your league.
I think there's a balance, right? And the more picks you have, the more likely you are to hit on these guys. Right. But the balance, Chad, is you only have so many roster spots, right? So I'd love to have infinity amounts of rookie picks, but
right.
You can't. You don't have the roster space.
If you got a 20-player taxi squad, it's a whole different scenario.
Oh yeah, totally.
And the other thing is, here's the biggest. I didn't mention this cascading effect. You get to week 3, super excited, right? Running back X is popping up. Man, I really want to pick him up. Who you dropping?
Mm-hmm.
If you have 35 roster spots, it's less of an issue. You got 20 to 25, it becomes a big issue. And so you end up getting stuck on your priors, and you go, well, I drafted this guy at 303. I can't drop him 3 months after I drafted him. I just can't. So you hold on to Jalen McMillan all year when you had a great pickup. You needed to pick up this running back. He ends up, he would have started a month for you down the line. But you held on to Jalen McMillan because you drafted him, and he's shown enough that you just can't move on from him at point X, Y, or Z.
So the other thing too, in regards to this, if you are avoiding receivers that don't go in the first round in your rookie draft, Chad, does that mean that when it gets to be rounds 2, rounds 3, round 4, whatever of your rookie draft, you're either looking for injury away type running backs, or trading the pick? Like, are those the two options you're looking at?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I mean, we talked about Mike Evans. I mean, he's going for a second round pick. So, you get to a certain spot and you're like, well, I could probably trade for someone like Mike Evans, and if you don't have a need for that, again, you have a lot of avenues. And I think, enjoy the process. People rush through their rookie draft. They can't wait till they're on the clock and they just been boom, player submitted. I just drafted and the draft is over in 48 hours. And it's like, if you have an 8-hour clock, I implore you to use it. And again, this is not to delay things, but send out offers. This is the prime time for everyone being locked in. And now your 208 is not their 208, and they might look and say, man, I really want Jalen Milroe. Man, I really want Cam Skattebo. I really want this other guy. And they're willing to overpay. And you're like, well, this is just, an incoming rookie. Milroe is my quarterback 4 if I draft him. And they might view it as Milroe is Lamar Jackson. I'm getting a huge value. I wish I could get him. And when you offer that and they're willing to give up their, weekly wide receiver 2 or 3, and you're a little light there. So yes, I mean, running backs end up popping and people go by this hit rate thing, which really bothers me. So they look at a player hitting for a top 24 season, let's say, for the aggregate of the entire year. And that's the only thing that counts. And I would say there's so many of these micro moments up and down on a player's journey where hitting, like, for example, Anthony Richardson, no one would say right now he hit, right? Yet last offseason, he popped for 2 or 3 games, got hurt. And then last offseason, he was going for top 10 dynasty quarterback prices. Mm-hmm. You could have got yourself with Richardson and maybe not even a first round pick. You could have got nuzzling up to like Patrick Mahomes and stuff. So you don't need, and Bucky Irving right now, he's white hot, right? I mean, he's going for like 101, 102, 103 prices. I'll tell you this, Bucky Irving, if you can get Omarion Hampton or get in the position to get Omarion Hampton, who's drafted in the first round, you should do that 10 times out of 10. Like some of these things are not hard. And so I would just say explore trading at every opportunity because this is your chance to be a GM. Who do you want? Who do you like? Because 101, 105, all these picks are going to be most valuable when they're on the clock and people can see, I can draft Ted McMillan. I can draft Tyler Warren with this pick. I'm willing to give you a lot because I want that guy. I want to get the IPO of these shares.
Exactly. Do you find yourself trading? I mean, I would assume that you find yourself trading rookie picks either on the clock or as we're leading up to the rookie draft. You're not one to usually trade them in fall or during the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be really selective. I use it as a baseline of if I trade a future first round pick or like, a big asset like that, it's to upgrade and get one of those assassins at quarterback. It's to get a game changer, an apex predator, as I call them. So, if you're dealing a first round pick and you're like, well, I'm dealing away, a couple quarterbacks and a first, and I'm getting Josh Allen, like that's the way to use a first round pick. Oh, I can go get Justin Jefferson. And you know what? It might mandate me trading my future first round pick. So those are it's got to be a top 12, 15, 18 startup valuation veteran player. And ideally, it's going to be at a premium position. Super flex, that would be quarterback, tight end premium. Let's have 1, 2, 3 big time tight ends. All those things kind of meet the benchmarks for trading away a future first.
We have talked a lot about Dynasty 201 here tonight, which I think we do a lot on this show. But I want to ask you about the best running back landing spots for rookies this year. Some are obvious, right? Las Vegas is one. Chicago, I think, is a sneaky one. Dallas is one we're going to be watching for as well. What are some of the other running back landing spots, the teams that you're looking for to see what they do? Maybe not necessarily in round 1, Chad, but round 2, round 3. What are the best spots that you want to see these backs land in?
2 that have come up recently when looking at some of the data on what positions are these teams visiting with. And because it's a running back deep class where even if it's not round 1 or round 2, we've got 15 to 20 guys that I could see at some point in their career being a 1A option and spiking in value fantasy wise, being a bridge option for a season or part of a season. The 2 that really popped up to me that aren't super obvious are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm super excited about Jalen Warren. They have met with 9 different running backs.
Wow.
That's almost double anybody else.
And you can only meet with 30 prospects too.
Yes.
Which means they're utilizing almost a third of their
more than quarterbacks. They've met with running backs. And you look, it's Kenneth Gainwell who they brought in. Jalen Warren's on a 1-year deal. Like, it aligns. Like, they need a running back, right? I mean, if Kenneth Gainwell, your spot starter, if something happens in September, can't be your answer. They've met with a ton of guys. So I'm super interested in who they get. I think that's a great landing spot. Again, maybe not for this year, but developing, the pipeline into 2026 could be very real. It could be a Bucky Irving type situation, right? A guy that you get to November and you just can't deny him touches. The other one, and this is one that I've talked about, I actually mock drafted a running back here more than one occasion, not in round 1, but I think it's notable in the first few rounds here. Houston Texans. Ooh. They're also high on the list. They've met with 4 running backs and Joe Mixon getting closer to 30. Damien Pierce, they have zero faith in the running back 2 spot, right? So you say, this is a team they're probably not going to get the offensive line fixed. They're going to be gone by 25. They're not going to really have a great option there. So you say they're going to have to run the ball with Joe Mixon. They were at their best last year with Mixon being the unequivocal workhorse, and it was almost by necessity. So they have an extra pick on day 2, 58, 79, 89. So they have a bonus pick there. It's a rich class. So I think this could be the plan for the future, as well as their running back 2 in short order.
I'm going to throw 2 more at you here.
Yeah.
Let me get your opinion. Kansas City at 31. You could also make the case Kansas City. What do they pick in the second round then? 63.
And they also have 66, a bonus pick for them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, from Tennessee. Okay, so they are – well, maybe the sweet spot for them is taking a running back either at 63 or 66. And that's going to change the way we think about – there's a lot of Elijah Mitchell truthers that came out after the Chiefs signed him. I don't know if there's anybody out there defending the honor of Kareem Hunt at this point.
Right. Pacheco is still going for seconds in Dynasty, which I find interesting. Like, that's a spec bet that you should recycle that to like 206 and say, hey, he's not going to go up in value. If they don't draft a running back, he's not suddenly worth a first in July. So I think the Chiefs were a little more obvious of a one for me, but I think that round 2, round 3 zone is going to be that round 1, probably not. I would love TreyVeon Henderson to go there, but he's not going to make it to 63. So Chiefs, they could challenge that whole depth chart right away if they get one of these talented guys.
The other one I want to bring up, and this is maybe my own because I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but what about the Commanders, who had Austin Eckler, and he is what he is. You know what you're getting, but Brian Robinson will be a free agent after this year, and it would be certainly nice if you could start the 2026 season with a sophomore running back that cut his teeth under Jaden Daniels this year. I think that's an interesting one. I don't know if they'd use a first-round pick on it, but Washington could certainly utilize a running back selection at 61.
Doesn't it feel like they're almost a low-level version of this, but almost like Cincinnati in the terms of they just want to make their offense as good and unstoppable as possible? You bring in Debo, and again, like you were saying, I mean, just more. They bring back Zach Ertz when they probably didn't have to, but you add a running back here, especially if it's a more dynamic option. That's the bigger thing, right? Brian Robinson catching some passes. I know he had a couple long touchdowns this past year. Bit of an outlier stuff. But they only have 2 picks, so not a third-round pick, but 29. I mean, again, if you infuse that, Jaden Daniels was unstoppable on his own. Right. So can you imagine putting a TreyVeon Henderson or like a speed playmaker, or you get to round 4 and like Bashul Tutin or like one of these big juiced up guys is still out there? Eckler has lost that. He was that 5 years ago, but I think that's maybe the missing link here. They're probably more likely to go wide receiver than running back in round 1, if we're being fair.
You mentioned offenses that want to just make themselves unbelievably good. I'll be honest with you. I drank the Bears Kool-Aid last year, and I was wrong. But this year, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams in his second year, you have Odunze, you have DJ Moore. Well, I am going back, and here's why. In the first 3 rounds, you could get an offensive lineman. Yeah. You could get a difference-making tight end to either pair with or eventually replace Cole Kmet, and you could get Judkins or TreyVeon Henderson or Caleb, like one of these guys in that. And then all of a sudden that Bears offense is like, my God, this is a headache now for defensive coordinators when it's Bears week. That's another team that I think could really – now, I don't know if they'll go nuclear with offense on day 1 and day 2. but they could. And in that
do you
case,
think we're giving Ben Johnson too much credit? Like, I think a lot of people, like, they were expecting the Bears. What was it, like 8.5, 9 was their over under last year, and it was like they're going to make the playoffs and all this. Caleb Williams was a train wreck.
Yeah.
I remember in the preseason, everyone's just globbing on to he had one or two drives like late in these preseason games. He was bad until that in the preseason, and he was bad in the regular season. In my opinion, if they turn around all the way and they're a good offense, Ben Johnson, like, up his salary immediately.
Well, okay.
Because
here's just real quick.
They had the weapons last year.
Bill Hollywood, a resident Lions fan, saying Ben Johnson is a genius. You know what they didn't have last year, and they've already addressed it in free agency? Offensive line. Mm-hmm. They have gone out. Now, whether, Joe Thuney and all these guys are still going to be able to churn out good production, I don't know, because it's not like they're young guys in their first contract. But I think one of the things that I talked about with people last year and told me, Balky, you're an idiot. They never had an offensive line. I should have put more focus on that. I was all excited that the Bears, Ryan Poles was this forward-thinking guy. Like, there's no way my quarterback's going to fail because I have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen with him. I went out and got DeAndre Swift. I have Cole Kmet. How can he fail? Well, he failed because they put
it in the home studio in the pool, and yet the foundation of the house is falling apart.
Exactly. and then, like, I don't know if they're going to get Genty in the first round. I don't think they should take Genty in the first round. But let's say they don't. Let's say they take Tyler Warren if he's still available, or if they take Kelvin Banks or one of these big tackles, and then you hit up one of the Ohio State guys or Johnson or whoever in the early second, and then you add another tight end in the the mistake I made with the Bears last year was I underestimated how important the offensive line was going to be to Caleb Williams. I'm not making that mistake again this year. At least I don't think so. With as far as what they've done in free agency, so that's a team that. And listen, we've seen the Bears make pretty significant hires before, and they blew up in their face. So that could happen again this year. And maybe we are giving Ben Johnson too much credit. But I think if we look at the whole and see what they're doing on offense, I really like the direction that organization is going right now for the first time in a long time.
One thing I've said about Caleb Williams, if I were there in some capacity and able to design practices, I would have an air horn. And it would go off after 2.5 seconds on every single Caleb Williams drop back all off season. We know he can whirling dervish, 3.5, 4 seconds, and some good, some bad happens at those moments. But I would just train it all the way through him. You're getting the ball out. Like, you would have these drives and they would put together 3-4 throws, quick game, and he would actually have a little bit of momentum. And then all of a sudden they would go away from it and bad things happen all the time. So he's a slow quarterback in general. He's got to learn to just get the ball. Like, maybe be a little more Shedeur Sanders. Like, we might get a couple years from now and be like, I wonder if Caleb Williams could just operate a little more like Shedeur Sanders in this one capacity.
Johnny Manziel could have used that drill as well back in the day.
Good comp.
2025 running back class. Really, really good. Is it as good as 2017? And Chad, quite frankly, does it matter if it's as good as 2017? Like, I've been comparing it to that class quite a bit, and each class is its own entity, it's its own thing. So maybe we don't even need to compare it to, but I just think back how talented that class was. I don't think 2025 is quite as good, but man, this year's class is really good. And I know that, to your point, what you were saying earlier, I know a lot of my second and third round picks and fourth round picks. In my rookie drafts, if I'm not able to trade them, I'll be utilizing them on a lot of running backs just to see what happens with these guys.
Yeah, and that's a good tip for rookie drafts in general, where, okay, just pretend like you're a random NFL fan. You watch some random, NFL draft shows, listen to mock drafts, listen to how they talk. Everyone unequivocally says strong class at running back, wide receiver, especially at the top, not so much. And then quarterback, weak, tight end, pretty deep overall, right? So if you take that as a prism, you go through, let's say you're in some tight end premium drafts. When in doubt, unless you have a reason not to, if you just go through your draft and you're like, okay, it's time for me to take a rookie. If you take a running back or you take a tight end, you're probably in better shape than if you do the opposite, which is like whack-a-mole. And you're like, well, I kind of like this guy. They talked about this wide receiver being a good route runner. That's going to make a lot of mistakes. I will say pre-draft, we're a 20. I actually have some data that goes through this. I view the how good a class is by the first 3 rounds. Day 3, it's a lot of, what's going to happen out there in the wilderness. In terms of a overall score, so this looks at my projection model stuff combined with where they go in the draft. 442 was the number in 2017. So so we have a number here. 442. The average is about.
Before you go forward, 442. Yeah. That was the number after the NFL draft.
Yes, that's the finalized number of where did they go in the draft, how strong were their profiles, and putting all that together into master mixology. 442, that's about 30 to 40% over an average class since, in like 15 to 20 years. This year, pre-draft, we're at 409. So that's about 10% off, very strong. But again, the final numbers there, it's probably not going to approach. This already accounts for Omarion Hampton going in the first round. This already accounts for a number going in the top 100. And the biggest thing I would say is we don't have prospects. Like I have quibbles with 2 or 3 prospects that are going to go in the top 100. These are quibbles. Like I don't have like a glaring, avoid, you can't draft that guy. And what I would say is when we have access now to the results, 2017 is on such a pedestal. I mean, people pick out Leonard Fournette like he was a categorical bust. He was not. He almost got them to the Super Bowl over Tom Brady and the Patriots, for goodness sake, riding that Blake Bortles pony, and they were a half away. So Leonard Fournette, you had McCaffrey, you had Dalvin Cook at his prime, you had Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt. You were 6 for 6 in the top 85 or so of that draft in terms of 3 or 4 plus fantasy starter seasons out of each of them. That's an unbelievable. Kareem Hunt out of the gate was arguably the strongest guy of that whole bunch. Yeah. It is a laundry list of absolute snipers at the position. So, and then that's not even taking into account, we had a big pop up from James Conner after year 1 behind Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, that's the Tariq Cohen class. You had Jamal Williams early on, Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones from day 3. Chris Carson was early, Austin Eckler from UDFA. I don't think anyone from a result standpoint, no class can really touch that in terms of it was a banger, absolute banger list. And so this year, pre-draft, it looks pretty good. And again, 10% off, in my opinion, is still a massive whirlwind, awesome team building class. And frankly, running back in Dynasty needs it. We've got a lot of guys right now that are 24, 25 plus. We need an infusion of 21, 22-year-olds, and we're going to get it this year. So there's going to be some carnage. It may not be immediate, but it's going to be long-lasting where you see guys start to lose jobs, form committees, and when they're 25 to 28 years old, that can strike the end of their viability of being worth a lot in Dynasty, where they still are holding on to that.
I may have brought this up before. That 2017 class, Chad, 8 of those running backs went to a Pro Bowl. 8 of them. Now here's the fun trivia for tonight. The chat room can play along. 8 running backs went to the Pro Bowl. They were, in no particular order, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, Aaron Jones. Can you name the 8th Pro Bowler? I'll give you a hint. You already named him.
Yeah, probably Chris Carson, right?
It's not. That's what I would have said.
No.
It's Tariq Cohen, but the cheat code or the cheat here was he went as a return man.
Yes, I was going to say it was probably a hybrid. Yeah, special team.
Yes, yeah. So he was but I mean, like the guys who didn't, like Samaje Perine was in that class. Jamal Williams was in that class. I had, you probably remember this. Everybody was falling all over themselves to draft Joe Williams in the rookie draft.
Yes, he was going, second round. I remember. But look at, you remember what the Green Bay did? Green Bay got Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones and paid a pittance for those guys, and they were stalwarts for years.
Yeah, and Jones ended up being the better of them, even though they took him a year later. Yeah. And Williams led the league in touchdowns one year, and he wasn't a Pro Bowler. Unbelievable. Anyway, we have to keep moving here. What do I want to touch on next? I want to go to TreyVeon Henderson. I'm going to skip over Ashton Genty for now. TreyVeon Henderson is going to be 23, I think, by the start of the season.
Yeah.
This was a guy, if we think about last year in the NFL draft, he might have been the, I don't know.
One.
Would he have been running back 1? I know he's
I think so.
2. Okay.
I think so.
So, and a lot of people were excited, like, oh, I have the 101. I'm going to take TreyVeon Henderson. Here we go. And then Henderson's like, you know what? I'm going to take this sweet nil money, stay at Ohio State, try to win the national championship, which he did. And now he comes into a loaded running back class. where he may be running back. He's probably going to be running back 3. But getting that extra year and knowing how well he did this year, does that mean anything for you, Chad, given that he was beating up on 19 and 20-year-old guys at the age of 22? Or is that just, is that too much in the minutia here?
Age matters. So I'm gonna tell you that that's part of my comp process. That's part of the evaluation. If you get a 21-year-old on kickoff weekend, that is better than 22. You'd ideally like as young as possible. 21 to 21 and a half is the ideal. As young as you can get at running back, essentially you're getting the whole thing. I will say, and it starts to creep up in Dynasty because you see someone, for example, that comes out at 23 years old, they get old in a hurry. Like, I think a lot of people are catching up, not just the pedigree, but you see someone like Tyrone Tracy, he's very old. He was 24 as a rookie. And all of a sudden in Dynasty, there's sort of a glass ceiling on how high they can go, how excited you can be due to how old they are. Garindo's on the older side. Blake Corum's older from last year. So you really would have, it was an old class last year. So yes, I would say him coming out at 21.9 last year as opposed to 22.9, it's a big deal. It's not the biggest deal. Pedigree still counts. But when you're doing a total dynasty valuation, not specifically where do they fit within the rookie hierarchy, that's when it comes, when you start stacking them in and you're like, okay, TreyVeon Henderson was good as a rookie, but you know what? So was Dylan Sampson, and Dylan Sampson is almost 2 years younger. Like, if they're both pretty good in year one, all of a sudden we get to January and you start stacking up and you're like, oh my gosh, TreyVeon Henderson's almost 24 years old, and he was running back 30. And then you've got Dylan Sampson, wide receiver 36. He looks good too. And he's only going to be 22 years old and he's already been in the NFL for a year. So that's where it comes up. It comes in the grand dynasty valuation, not so much the rookie valuations, I would say.
All right, so let me ask you this. We were just comparing 2017 to 2025 for the running back class. Go back last year. Kaleb Johnson, if he was in last year's class with, Brooks and Benson and Corum and all these guys, Marshawn Lloyd, where do you think Kaleb Johnson, well, I mean, you could probably figure this out numerically and analytically from what you have. Where would he rank in last year's class for you?
I'll just tell you this. I have some deep Devy leagues. You kind of mentioned, the diehards, they'll have some drafts before the NFL draft. It finished up a few weeks ago. Kaleb Johnson, with 125 college players, offensive only, that were owned already, Kaleb Johnson was not one of them. So So again, he has relatively speaking popped up in the last 12 months as a NFL legit prospect, more so than he had built his profile in the first 2 years of his Iowa career. So Kaleb Johnson, not going to be much of a receiver. You hear people talking about how, oh man, if it's outside zone in this certain system. So he's a very specific type of player. And then people talk about how much he's going to be a freak and look at this long speed. He ran 4.57. Again, not a bad time for when you're 220 plus pounds, but those kind of flaws where, again, is he going to be a true 3-down guy? Is he going to catch more than 25, 30 passes in a year? Probably not. I'm looking back. I mean, I would have had him somewhere in round 3. So that is, I mean, is it ahead of Corum and Marshawn Lloyd? Is it behind? It wouldn't be ahead of Trey Benson or Brooks. So again, that was a very weak class, but he would have been in that bucket of probably round 3 and probably in that running back 3-4 kind of zone.
We have a question. This was something from Bill Hollywood here in the YouTube chat. This was something we talked about briefly earlier with Bucky Irving, but what if we drop it in a redraft bucket here, for lack of a better term? If Omarion Hampton ends up going to Dallas in the first round, or he'd have to go to Dallas in the first round, he wouldn't slip to the second round. Let's say he goes to Dallas in the first round. For redraft, who would you rather have on your team? Would you rather have Bucky Irving or would you rather have Omarion Hampton?
Wow. Man, Bucky Irving is a force of nature. I mean, when you watched him, he had shades of LaShawn McCoy to me. Like, it really, and I don't throw that around lightly with the jump cuts. And man, Dallas's offensive line has eroded. I would say, we're talking redraft, I would probably be more comfortable with Bucky Irving because I keep going back to Tampa Bay. What do they keep doing? They keep having consistency, right? I mean, year over year, they're saying, we're good. Let's keep this the same. And that continuity is very important. And we assume Dallas is going to be good. What if Dak goes out? I mean, there's so many variables, and you have a rookie coming in to the NFL. So again, more than a 1-year prism, I think that's an easy answer the other way. But redraft, again, I think you have to take the known and the what is not changing or obvious bounce back guys that are due to injury alone or things went askew last season. But rookies in general don't produce all that well. And I know I'm talking about round 1 running backs, which is probably the lone exception here. But I still think that's tough. That's tough to go over Bucky Irving and what he provides in the passing game.
Yeah, it's close for me too. I think I'd probably lean towards Irving, although, God,
it's a good question because
it's very good.
Because again, O'Marion Hampton could be. I mean, I know we throw those guys aside like Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, but they're pros. And to say that, so the problem is you don't know if O'Marion Hampton is going to be full go at the very beginning. Most guys aren't. Or is it going to be a midseason arrival or rising up to that point? He's got to earn it, quote unquote. And the other thing is, do we really think Rachaad White is going to get more usage? Like it worked the other way, right? It was like more and more Bucky Irving as we went through the season. He was undeniable. So
I think I know I think Sean Tucker's still there,
yep.
But what if they add somebody in like the 3rd round, and
sure.
Then that could cramp Bucky Irving style as well. Bill, I'm going to be honest with you. Ask us this question 2 weeks from now, and we'll have a better answer for you.
Way better answers.
Speaking of difficult questions to answer, I put on here harder to rank, maybe harder to assess is a better question. Who is the harder prospect to assess this year? Is it Arizona State running back Cam Skattebo, or is it Bowling Green tight end Harold Fannin Jr.?
Harold Fannin Jr. I think Cam Skattebo, he has a lot of appeal. Like we kind of know what he is, right? The limitation is long speed. The limitation is overt moving athleticism. But he's 219 pounds. He's arguably one of the top 2 or 3 pass catchers in the class. And he breaks a ton of tackles. Like the things that you would want a running back to be their strengths if they aren't going to be requisite 40 time, he has all those. And guess what? He's going to go in the mid rounds, and that's where he should go, probably round 3. And that's the perfect spot. Harold Fannin is a little different. And I will say this, like, so tight end is tough. And he's coming from a small school, Bowling Green. And everyone wants to point the fact that he played, some games against higher competition and they couldn't stop him. Very valid. Tight end, we have seen a number of false positives of guys that have been very, very, very productive in college. You could say Fannin is more productive than them. That's fine. We're splitting hairs. They were all really productive. And tight end is tough. Also, so tight end is a tough position to crack. Number 2, we're talking about a guy that a little bit undersized, right? 6'3", he ran 4.7. And if he's so productive, so dominant at 18, 19, 20 years old, lid lifting a program that has no business doing anything in a passing game, let's be honest. And yet, no one is talking about him as a 1st round pick. And plenty of people are not even talking about him in the first 2 rounds. At a minimum, people are still like, well, Mason Taylor's going to go ahead of him. Elijah Arroyo is going to go ahead of him. Fannin, maybe you can go next. Late 2nd, maybe 3rd round. So why do we get to the end game of that's where he's going to go if there's all these other historic things? He's 21 years old, 100% production score in my model, all this kind of stuff. Undeniable. Well, he's 6'3". He's not overly athletic. In my opinion, he's a poor man's Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett was a top 50 pick. Gerald Everett was a little more twitchy, and that's why I say poor man's. And he also was with the Rams. Good situation to land in. And yet, fantasy-wise, we just kind of shoulder shrugged the entire time. And he was with the Bears, I think, last year, and now he's basically out of the league. So, I mean, undersized, ran a 4.7. And do we think that level translates from that level of competition with this level of athlete? He's got small hands. Like, there's not a lot of, other than the production part, I mean, and being the vibrant centerpiece of that offense, there's not a lot there. And so I think the translating aspect, the NFL should be way more on board with this if he was as good as his production numbers point to in college.
Interesting. I was super excited for this guy before the Senior Bowl, Chad. I was like, God, I'm going to pick this guy in the early 2nd round in like all my drafts. He's going to be a cheap code at tight end. He's like a poor man's Brock Bowers. Then the Senior Bowl happened, and then I'm kind of like, I need to back off this a little bit, research it a little bit more, and I've backed off it quite a bit. I'll still probably have some shares in my dynasty leagues of him, but definitely reining in my enthusiasm for him.
Also a red flag. One other thing I'd point out, his ADOT was 6. And for tight ends, you want guys that are a little closer to a wide receiver, a little closer to someone that can stretch the field. And if you combine a 6 ADOT, which is a red flag, if I am doing flags on what would say, hey, this is why it doesn't work out, that's one of them. And so you say a 4.7 guy with a low ADOT on an offense that says, all we have is Harold Fannin, let's just pepper him with short targets. That works in college. Yeah. I don't think an NFL team is going to sit there and say, let's pepper a 4.7 tight end for 130 he's going to need to see big volume in the NFL. And we know you generally need big volume at tight end anyway. So do we really think he's going to be one of the top 5 to 10 tight ends in the NFL? And a lot of this profiling says he can be a really good number 2. And heck, he might even be a starter in a perfect situation, but probably not better than half of them in the NFL.
Kansas City goes running back at the end of the second, and they take Fannin in the early third as the Kelce replacement. I'm in. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Forgive me if I'm misremembering this, Chad. I don't know if you wrote this. I don't know if you said it or if it was part of one of the shows that you do. Damien Martinez, NFL comp, Steven Jaxson. Did you say this or did somebody else?
I did say that. That was back when he was actually 230 plus pounds. And it was an easy one because, 2 Oregon State guys he ends up transferring. It was probably multiple years ago, to be fair.
Okay,
it was a little too, no, but that was it. I can't believe Damien Martinez, though. He comes in at, 218 pounds. And again, with these bigger backs, what I love about bigger backs is you can always lose a few LBs and you get faster. Like all of a sudden, Damien Martinez, he comes out there and runs 4.51. People thought he might run, in the 4.5s, 4.6s, whatever. But 217, still plenty big to be a workhorse back. So no, the Steven Jaxson comp doesn't really work now. But 217 with his level of rushing and receiving scores, again, good enough receiver, and going to be a day 3 guy that, guy can play. I know Greg Cosell really likes him, but yeah, the size thing moves the comp needle quite a bit for me.
Pittsburgh Steelers running backs in 2025, Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, and Damien Martinez. I think that works.
Don't tease me.
All right. I won't tease you with that, but I will tease our audience with what's coming up after the break. We have roughly 20 minutes to go on the show. We're going to talk about this Matthew Golden 40-time gate. I want to talk a little bit about Travis Hunter. Jaden Higgins is another guy I want to touch on, and I won't tease anybody else because I don't know how much we'll get to. We'll get into some tight ends as well. He's Chad Parsons, Under the Helmet Dynasty. Of course, Football Guys and the Dynasty Think Tank podcast. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. We're going to be back in about 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Better Sports Network.
Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and if you're anything like me, football season never ends. Super Bowl's over. Who cares? We got a lot of speculation to do. And the best way to take advantage of that is at myffpc.com. Mock drafts are fun. They're fine. But if you really want to get leverage, get in one of their never too early best ball drafts or never too early super flex drafts now, where you can take advantage of all your takes. I'm in there now because I got hunches, right? I got ideas for free agency. I got ideas for the drafts. I got ideas for the 2025 NFL season, and I want to get them on paper now. And I want to do so before the NFL draft, right? Before the cat's out of the bag. That's the beauty of these contests, right? You go in and you get set up, and the drafts are already going, and they end on April 24th, right when the NFL draft starts. So you can get in there, get all your takes in, take advantage of everything before everybody finds out what happens. Use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com when you get set up. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get in these tournaments, the never too early best ball and the never too early super flex contest, to get your shot at $10,000 or $40,000 grand prizes.
Thank you, Coop A Fiasco on X. That's Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm, letting you know that both of those tournaments are going to be filling up here shortly. They will stop a week from today when the NFL draft starts. We'll be knee deep into the first round, 7 days from now. Both those tournaments are already 90+% full. Check them out. myffpc.com is where to go for that. And check out the Big Gorilla Tournament, a $1 million grand prize available there this year, including the early Rampage tournament. So if you're entering, you're basically in the early Rampage tournament and the Big Gorilla Tournament. It's 2 tournaments for the price of 1 entry fee. And then, of course, the 7 Bananas promo, where you can win a Jungle Safari for 4, courtesy of the FFPC. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Chad Parsons from Under the Helmet Dynasty, Footballguys, and the Dynasty Think Tank joining us tonight. Travis Hunter, what a mind meld this is. I have not wrapped my head around it. I've been taking a few shares here and there when he slips in best ball tournaments. I don't know what I'm going to do with him in Dynasty. I'm glad that my rookie drafts won't happen until after the NFL draft, where at least we should know the plan for whatever team takes him as far as how much wide receiver he's going to take or how much wide receiver he's going to play. When you're taking him or when you're looking at him here, Chad, how do you view Travis Hunter's at least 2025 going and career? How much wide receiver is he actually going to play? And will his defensive duties actually take away from how good he could be if he was solely focused on offense?
Most interesting argument I've heard for Travis Hunter playing both ways is NFL, less no huddle, more TV breaks, slower pacing, and it might actually be quote unquote easier for him. I think that is a interesting kind of woke take there, that it's possible just because I don't know how it works Monday through Saturday. My biggest thing is will an NFL team allow him to not be fully vested into both meeting rooms? Because it's not like 10 to 11 is defensive back time, and then we just on the off chance Travis Hunter is on our team, that 11 to 12 is wide receiver meeting room. So I have a hard time thinking the bandwidth between games is going to yield a full-time result. He's the most fascinating player I can remember from a fantasy lens, point blank period, other than the fiasco of like Taysom Hill and dual eligibility and all this, he's playing tight end, but he's getting quarterback numbers and anyway, but there's some things on platforms that cause stirs like that. But Travis Hunter, the prospect, he's Garrett Wilson-like in my model as a wide receiver alone. That he's going to be drafted in the top 5. And if you tell me right now he's a full-time wide receiver, he is he's the 103. We talked about stacking up a board. The only guys you would put ahead of him are first-round running backs, in my opinion. So, and there's an argument to maybe not have Hunter that low. So you have someone where the upside or the ceiling of we get overt positive at wide receiver, or again, you just value him as such, 103, lock and load. Yet you think he's going to play defensive back, or they announce him in the draft, cornerback, Travis Hunter. And you don't get, the dual option. You don't get a lot of verbiage that might make you feel all warm and cozy that he's going to play wide receiver. I think it could happen that he falls to the second round of rookie drafts. Yeah. That's a pretty big spread. And the other thing I would say is I have a feeling no matter how someone else feels going into their rookie draft, if you are looking at this from a probability standpoint and saying, well, I think he has an added bust risk because he might end up playing defense, and we don't even know if he's good or bad at wide receiver, unlike Ted McMillan or any of these myriad of other wide receiver only prospects. You add that into the mix. I pretty much, how I did it, because I'm a numbers guy, I pretty much put a 30% multiplier, or essentially putting a discount in there. I valued everything like he was a full-time wide receiver. We know exactly what he is. And at the very end of it, I just put a 0.7 multiplier on there. So he only gets 70% of that value. It's arbitrary, but I got to do something. And that puts him on my board right now at 109. Now, the problem with this is I have a feeling you go into every one of your rookie drafts. If you sit there and you have 109, 110, 111, whatever, there's going to be one person in your league that is just like, he's a great player. I'm going to take the chance. All these players are risky. Quinshad Judkins could tear his Achilles. Shedeur Sanders could bust just because he busts. All these types of things. So I'm going to take Travis Hunter. I know he's good. And if he ends up playing defense, so be it. There's a lot of risk in taking rookies in general. And they will take him in the top 5 or 6 of your draft. I think there's going to be many drafts like that. So right now we're in this zone of, hey, mock drafting, it doesn't really count. And we have all these experts that do a lot of what I just said into their, well, I'm not going to take Travis Hunter at 5 or 6. I'm going to draft him at 11 or 12 or 15. And I can talk about it because he might play defense and all this stuff. I think if you get into these drafts, the real drafts in May and June, he's going to go higher than the ADP of 10, 11, 12 right now. I think he's going to go at 5, at 6. It depends on, like you said, does a non-round one running back go to Dallas? Do we get a juicy wide receiver landing spot? Do we get a couple quarterbacks that go in the top 16 of the draft that we maybe aren't projecting right now? If those all things happen, maybe Travis Hunter is a little lower, but I think there's going to be one overt super fan in every draft that it has a top 7 or 8 pick, and they're going to draft him there so that his ADP is going to rise, even if. And the other thing I would ask you, Eric, is are we going to get over? What do you need to hear? Like they're going to make the pick and the GM's going to come on. Somebody's going to come on from the team and say, he's going to play. Like other than saying he's a full-time wide receiver for us, we think he's the best wide receiver. In addition to the best player in this draft, he's going to transformationally change our offense. And we don't know about the defense thing. We think he's the best wide receiver. That's kind of the phraseology you need to hear.
That's it. That's all I need to hear. And you're
going to hear that. Aren't they going to say we got the best football player in the draft?
Okay. You could be right on that.
They're going to say all those schmaltzy things.
Here's an underrated aspect.
Sure.
That's what the GM, the head coach should say. What's Roger Goodell going to say? Is Roger Goodell going to announce him as a corner? Or
Travis Hunter said he wants to hear both positions called. And
that's the official. That's the plan.
Dude, I know. Do you think it's true that whatever you write, like if, for example, like Kyle Juszczyk, like was it fullback or running back, or can you just say anything? Can they say Cam Ward defensive back? Is that allowed?
I think it's whatever I think the team writes it on the card, or they say it. So at least that's the way I've always understood it. So I think whatever Goodell says is going to carry weight, because I think it's coming from the
Jalen Milroe, running back, Alabama.
They could. They could. I mean,
setting him up like the Jimmy Graham thing. They could set him up for future contractual negotiations.
If all I know is this, and this is probably a wrong take by me, but if he's announced as the number 2 pick in the draft, the Cleveland Browns select defensive back Travis Hunter.
Okay.
I'm going to drop him down my list,
Well, I mean, that is the first full official thing we're going to get, literally, of a moniker attached to his position in the NFL. But most likely it's going to say both, right? Most likely.
I don't know. Do you think he'll say both? I think he's just going to say one or the other.
And then Travis Hunter comes out the other day and says, I don't want to play. I don't want to play if they're not going to give me a full opportunity to play at both positions.
I think they'll give him an opportunity. I think that if he shows he cannot handle both at a good level, then even he would say, like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit over my head here. And
isn't the most likely scenario, though, full-time defense, and you can play on it? Honestly, for fantasy, again, 60 snaps on offense is not required. There's 30 to 35 routes per game that the elite receivers run. If he runs 25 routes per game, but you don't obviously, only passing situations, where you don't want it to be that much of a tell, but Travis Hunter probably only has to play 30 to 35 snaps on offense. And that's plenty to be whatever vibrant version he's going to be for fantasy and production standpoint on offense. I just don't think you can moonlight and play 20 snaps on defense.
Yeah, I don't. People say, well, what's the comp? We don't have a comp. There's no precedent for this. Like,
let me ask you this though. Is he really good enough at a wide receiver to take him at 102 in an NFL draft? That's like Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think you're drafting him at 102 because of
he can do everything. You have a lot of chances to get it right?
I think he's probably, if he was wide receiver only, you can make a strong case that he's the best wide receiver in this draft.
He's wide receiver 1, but that still probably is. Garrett Wilson. I mean, he probably goes between 5 and 10 of the NFL draft.
I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
But 2, it's got to be the dual part that gets you on board with taking him at 2 or 3 or something.
Cullen Hoffman thinks Goodell is going to say both, and that will be depressing for me if that happens. But I'll start mentally preparing myself for it now.
Let me ask you this. If they announce wide receiver, you hear exactly what I said, which is he's the best player in this draft. He's going to be a transformative wide receiver. We'll see about defense, blah, blah, blah. Overt positives. Would you take him at 3 or 4 in a rookie draft?
I would. I absolutely. Okay. I mean, it would depend upon landing spots for other running backs.
Yeah, but just in general.
But in a vacuum, I'd have no problem.
And honestly, I think that's the right take. Yeah. But I don't know how on May 1st we could be so sure, right? Like, You're always gonna have that acorn in the back of your head. That's how aneurysms start. Like,
but then that's the thing. Like, I'm gonna listen. I draft for ceiling for rookie
okay.
draft. And
he's
and
definitely the ceiling play. Yeah.
If I'm drafting for ceiling, I'm not gonna pick at nits for that. I'm gonna go for broke. And if I lose out on Judkins or Henderson or Caleb Johnson,
right. Judkins being a nice running back too for 2 to 3 year span in his career, that is not a whirlwind, probably franchise changing decision for your team.
No.
Travis Hunter being as good as Garrett Wilson or better will.
Yeah. Let me tell you about a story here about a young wide receiver named Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden was he was the Robin to the Batman of Isaiah Bond coming into the combine. Isaiah Bond said he was going to set the 40 record, Chad. He did not. But you know who did have the best 40 time that year, this year at the scouting combine? It was Matthew Golden. And now all of a sudden, people are cranking him up draft boards and saying, oh my goodness, this guy could be the number one wide receiver in the draft, ahead of McMillan, ahead of Burden. He could be the guy. And then since then, I've seen a lot of people say, well, yeah, that's possible, but here's a red flag. Here's a red flag. Here's why I don't like him. I don't like him for this. I don't like him for that. He's just a speed guy. A lot of these guys that are drafted purely on their speed don't work out in the first round. And I'm always reminded of Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Golden went from nobody to hero to now almost dynasty villain right now, because there's a lot of people that are down on him, myself included. Am I wrong to be down on Golden? I think this kind of stems back to the whole, did his 40 get timed wrong at the scouting combine, which I know there's a lot of Zapruder film on the X right now about that. Where do you stand in on that?
I am part of the pixel counting community. So when you count frames, and this is what I do, I mean, there are, I think it's Real Analytics, their job where they're now doing max speed and acceleration and a lot of data on college or high school prospects. So we get a good sense of athleticism in game that we can compare. So I will just say, you know, in terms of, I was doing this years ago where college prospects, Devy stuff, and man, how fast is this running back? It's hard to tell when they're running past guys that aren't going to play in the NFL, because everyone could be a 4.75 guy and all of a sudden he's 4.6 and blowing past them. So I was already counting frames. And so it's easy. And when you get this community on X that you can count frames, and yes, they didn't start the clock right. He's, 4.29 is not an accurate time. They do all, you can also compare him to other players that run similar times. And they do that, the side by side, even on the NFL combine stuff. So, but I would say this, the brass tacks though, is he's fast. Is it 4.35? Is it 4.37? Is it 4.31? The point is, it's not 4.29. I will say this, for round one wide receivers, it doesn't really matter because they're baking all that in. That is the most important data point for the wide receiver, is getting the round one pedigree. I would also say this, he is sparsely or minimally or lightly productive. He didn't do that much, especially for a round one guy. I will say, with that pedigree zone of round one versus day 2 or day 3, it matters the least. So if the NFL signs on, and his over-under right now is pretty firmly in round one, like his odds of falling out are low. Therefore, we need to basically say he's good enough. He's good enough. And again, one thing I would point out is this early ADP has him in the second round of rookie drafts in Superflex. So I didn't think, if you had asked me in February, he runs 4.29 and it's like blowing up. People already liked him as this route running savant in January. I never would have guessed that I have him higher in my rankings than the ADP. But here I sit, and I don't know if people are going to move him up once he does go in round one, but your assumption should be that today, because every betting market says he's going to go there. So I think if you can get round one wide receivers in round 2 of your Superflex draft in general, you just sit there and do it every single time. Last year, it was Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette. You were getting them now, not over Penix or Bo Nix or any of these other guys at other positions, but within wide receiver, you generally say yes to that. And Matthew Golden is trending towards being there at 11 or 12, or maybe even 13, 14, 15. And whether it's 4.29, 4.35, 4.38, doesn't really matter. He's going to be a round one guy, and probably either neutral or even positive EV for where you can draft him in your rookies.
All right. So I'm starting to warm up to him a little bit now, especially with the whole round one wide receiver, like that wall of Jericho that's set up here. I think that's important to remember. I want to touch on this. I don't know how much we'll get to here. I don't believe I'm stealing this from anybody, and maybe it's inaccurate. I haven't heard it anywhere. Luther Burden III, I'm calling him a sexy gadget. Does that make sense? Does that ring true that Luther Burden at the next level is going to simply be a sexy gadget? In other words, he gets you excited. He looks good doing what he does, but he's not going to be the type of guy that's going to be the do-it-all, alpha traditional wide receiver one. Your thoughts on Burden III as a pro?
I'm all in. The biggest question now, he's going to be a rule breaker because I think he's trend lining towards being round 2, the first 10 to 15 picks of round 2 as opposed to round 1. Now, the exception we talked earlier in the show was there's going to be, are you in the wide receiver for my threshold of that is very difficult, but Luther Burden is a top 1% of the wide receiver model. And part of that, a big part of that is based on, you take the entire career arc. One of my biggest quibbles with the community is 90% of analysis looks at what they did their last college season. But Burden was, a 5-star guy. He comes in, produces right away. He's playing at Missouri the entire time. He's a glorified clone of DJ Moore. And Burden, he's elite after the catch. So if you're Missouri, you got Brady Cook at quarterback, not a whole lot going on. Name another offensive player. No one can. Got it. So if you have Luther Burden, you were blessed. You were blessed, and you spent your whole budget to have Luther Burden in your program. And you say, we're not very good. What are we going to do? Get Luther Burden the ball at all times in whatever ways our quarterback that might not even get drafted can do. And what do? They pepper him. Like you just said, he's a designed touch player. Now, there are times you see him as a speed slot, a deep slot, all these types of things. But when you look at his data on what he was after the catch, undeniable that this is going to translate to him putting guys in a blender in the NFL. And again, this is a bigger guy. Think of DJ Moore last year. Sometimes the best things the Bears had was what? A smoke route to DJ Moore. Just let him work. Let him work. Offensive line struggling, quarterback struggling. Let's get DJ Moore the ball. Luther Burden is on this level. And I think he is in this class, the best of the guys that's going to go in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds at wide receiver, the best after the catch guy in this league, in this draft. So Luther Burden, I really hope, I have one of my Patriot friends all excited because I said, you know what? Patriots, let's see what they do it for. He said they have to go offensive line. Like, you just cannot. Even if Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is there, you have to take offensive line. Not a debatable point. And I was like, well, what if they were able to get Luther Burden in round 2? And he's like, don't you tease me. Don't you dare. So again, I think that would provide 5 levels up from Pop Douglas and whatever, he was able to provide as a manufactured touch guy, and upside for well beyond that. So Burden is trend lining towards round 2. However, he would break my general guidepost because he's a top 1% profile. He provides everything you want. And again, DJ Moore was in a pretty strong class. You get him in late first, and I'm hoping Luther Burden provides such value in rookie drafts this
year. Everybody needs a rule breaker, and Luther Burden could be that. Better Boss wants to know tonight, Luther Burden, is he closer to DJ Moore for you or closer to Deebo Samuel?
Deebo Samuel, was a 4.58 guy, I believe. And again, he lower pedigree. And so Luther Burden, again, pretty equivalent to DJ Moore. And I do granular stuff. It's based on production, size, athleticism, a whole boatload of stuff beyond, what was their 40 time, and, do I like them? And do they, and everyone gets an all pro basically. But yeah, think of that though, a better Deebo Samuel type player and what that could provide in the right offense.
Chad, this has been so much fun. We could easily done another hour. I wanted to get into Colston Loveland, Trey Harris, and other stuff. I will have to go to uthdynasty.com, at UTH Dynasty on the X, at Dino Think Tank on the X for the Dynasty Think Tank that you do with Jordan McNamara. And then, of course, patreon.com/UTH, footballguys.com, and at Chad Parsons NFL. Can you kind of update us on the schedule of when new podcasts, when new content's coming out for you? So everybody kind of gets into the routine of when they're going to check their Chad Parsons content?
Absolutely. I record almost as much as Eric. I record 1,000 podcasts a year. If I were to estimate, there's probably a single hand on people that might record equal or more podcasts in a given year. I have so many different channels, a lot to say, and really all these channels are standalone. I will say this: if you are thinking about subscribing, the UTH Dynasty Black Label, I call it, so the premium shows. I don't do a live show during the draft, but Thursday and Friday night, every single skill position will get almost like an audiobook. You're going to get your own premium podcast on that UTH premium channel. So Cam Ward gets drafted within the next 10 to 15 minutes. A show is going to be out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it takes, going over their profile in depth, going over the landing spot. Where do they fit in my dynasty decision-making matrix for rookies? Where does that fit? Historically speaking, where you should take them, and then where they start fitting all those puzzle pieces together. So you're going to have dozens of shows that are out even before you get to the weekend there, populating your podcast feed. And frankly, you can go back in May, June, listen to these whenever you want and not have to go, what's that, minute 42 of the show, minute 90, going through these 3-hour long shows. I used to do those, but they get lost. So that's what you're going to get starting the draft. Also, my draft guide, which you get at patreon.com/UTH for free, mind you. Sign up there and you're going to get the draft guide updated by the end of draft weekend. I don't go to bed on Sunday night till it is done, and that is in your inbox and available on the Patreon feed. So you got the 2.0 version that's out right now, pre-draft. 3.0 is going to be out right after the NFL draft with ADP, full strategy, and all of that. So uthdynasty.com is where you get all the 12-month a year stuff, and then Patreon, all the bonus content, the draft guide for free. Get the VIP chat room. If you love Dynasty, if you're listening to this show for 2 hours, frankly, you're a Dynasty diehard. I know that. And so again, get in a VIP chat room. I'm in there answering questions. If we're going to have rookie draft talk all of May, pretty much, people are already drafting. So again, if you're on the clock at 105, all you do is go in there, start talking to us about it. And we're going to guide you through, talk about your roster, and help you make a great decision. And just everyone's in there passionate about their work, including myself. So
uthdynasty.com, patreon.com/UTH. Listen, Chad, this is so much fun. It always is. Enjoy the draft. We're now less than a week away from it. We'll be following everything that you have to say about all the landing spots and how it affects our dynasty leagues. Thanks so much for hanging out with me again. We'll do this again real soon.
Great to have you, Eric. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chad. The FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments, Orphan League, Startup Leagues, Dynasty Leagues over at myffpc.com, as well as the Big Gorilla. Check that out right now as we sign off tonight. No show this coming Thursday because I'll be at the NFL draft, actually, so we won't be doing a show. But we're going to do one Monday for you. Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Fantasy Pros Derek Brown will join me. That's going to be a fun one. For Chad Parsons, for Matt Deutsch, I have been Eric Balkman. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Talk with you on Monday.